One more minute, we go. Well, I guess I'll start here. A number of more people have registered, and we'll wait for them. We won't wait for them to come in because your time is as valuable as everybody else's. So let's go. My name is Joseph Gerson. I want to welcome you on behalf of Massachusetts Peace Action, the Campaign for Peace, Disarmament, and Common Security, and our partner organizations who've been organizing the August 6th Hiroshima and Nagasaki commemoration events here in Boston, Dewey Square, right across from South Station. Memory is essential to human survival. If we are to prevent nuclear cataclysms, we must teach new generations and remind others of the unimaginably destructive, omnicidal power of nuclear weapons and work for their total elimination. Would that it were otherwise, but as many of you know, the bulletin of the atomic scientists and others are warning that the dangers of nuclear war are now higher than at any time in the past, worse even than during the Cold War. The bulletin recently set its doomsday clock to 89 seconds to midnight. The U.S. is now on track to spend $2 trillion to upgrade its nuclear arsenal and all of its nuclear weapons delivery systems. The other nuclear powers are not far behind. Even with Russia now on the offensive in Ukraine, we need to recognize that the Kremlin has dangerously used its nuclear weapons in one of the ways that the U.S. has repeatedly used it since the Nagasaki A-bombing, to prevent or limit other nations from intervening to protect those we are determined to attack. During the Cold War, confrontations over Berlin served as the most likely trigger for nuclear cataclysm. Today, Taiwan plays that role. There and in the South and East China Seas, an incident, an accident, or a miscalculation could trigger escalation to nuclear war. China is now rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal, leaving us all in a situation in which we are three scorpions in a bottle. Trump's bombing of Iran has increased the danger of nuclear weapons proliferation, and of course there is more, as you'll be hearing this evening. We can save humanity from itself. That's the lesson of the courage and the wisdom of the Hibakusha, the A-bomb survivors, and from the small group of scholars and activists who launched that massive and successful nuclear weapons freeze movement in the 1980s. Next week's 80th anniversary commemoration of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki A-bombings will provide the Hibakusha and all of us who are working to prevent nuclear war and to abolish these omnicidal killing machines a unique opportunity to raise awareness and to build our movements for nuclear weapons abolition. Here in Massachusetts, look for and share the full-page signature advertisement in the Boston Globe that will be published on August the 4th. And if at all possible, please join us next Wednesday at Dewey Square, just across from South Station, between noon and 7. We'd especially like to see you at noon when we kick off with speakers, at 4 when Ben Groskup will give us a concert, and between 5 and 6 when we'll again have an impressive group of speakers. I'll introduce our speakers tonight's speakers in just a minute. First, a word about our format. Ira and Marie will each speak for up to 15 minutes, and then we'll follow with our question and answer period. When we get to the Q&A session, please use the raise hand function, which you will likely see via the react button at the bottom of your screen, and I will do my best to recognize you in order. Q&A does mean questions and answers. So with our limited time, and out of respect for others who may have questions, please refrain from making statements and pose your questions within a minute. Now, we're fortunate to have two leading figures of our movement to share with us why this year's 80th anniversary commemoration is so important and ways that you can engage. Dr. Ira Helfand is a member of the International Steering Group of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, ICAN, the recipient of the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize, and he is past president of the International Physicians for Prevention of Nuclear War, which founded ICAN, and which itself is a recipient of the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize. Ira is also a co-founder and past president of Physicians for Social Responsibility, IPPNW's U.S. affiliate, and a member of the steering committee of the Back from the Brink campaign. In 2023, he received the Gandhi King Aikaido Award from the Martin Luther King International Chapel at Morehouse College. Marie Inoue was born and raised in Tokyo, Japan. While working as an immigration attorney in New York since 2001, she's been active in grassroots movements to educate policymakers and elected officials of the costs, risks, and humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons and nuclear energy. She's also a co-founder of the Manhattan Project for a Nuclear-Free World, a board member of Peace Action New York State, and an active member of the Affected Communities and Allies Working Group. As co-chair of the World Nuclear Weapons Forum that will be held on October 5th and 6th in Hiroshima, Marie would like to create a place for international solidarity for nuclear victims and their allies, aiming at the elimination of nuclear harm and a world in which no more nuclear victims are created. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Ira, and away we go.
Thanks, Joseph, and good evening, everyone. As Joseph suggested, this is a very special year for Hiroshima observance for two reasons. First, it is the 80th anniversary, and therefore it is the last major year anniversary at which we expect that there will be large numbers of Hibakusha alive who were old enough at the time of the attack to be able to share their experiences with us. And it's a chance to pay tribute to these heroic individuals who have, in many cases, spent their lives reliving the worst day imaginable in order to try to educate us about the danger of nuclear war. It's also a time to acknowledge that this enormous resource is not going to be available to us much longer. And we're going to have to figure out other ways to help people understand the full horror that nuclear weapons represent. The other reason why this year is very particularly important is what's happened this year. So far, in the first 7 months of the year, 5 of the 9 nuclear-armed nations have been engaged in active wars, in some cases directly related to their nuclear arsenals. The Russians have continued their war of conquest in Ukraine and the continued flow of explicit nuclear threats that have accompanied this war. The United States and Israel attacked Iran's nuclear facilities, which may or may not have been being used to develop nuclear weapons. And India and Pakistan fought a mini war that lasted for 2 or 3 days in May. These two countries were attacking each other's Air Force bases and missile launching sites, and this could easily have escalated into a nuclear war. And that kind of underlines the point that Joseph made in his introductory remarks about the fact that we are the closest we've ever been to nuclear conflict. The 89 seconds on the bulletin of the atomic scientist clock is one marker of this. The specific warnings we've received from people like William Perry that we're closer to nuclear war than we've ever been have also contributed, I think, to our understanding of the immediacy of this danger. And this both gives added urgency to the work that we're doing, and it also creates an opportunity for us to do that work more effectively, because the enormous barrier of denial that the world has built around the nuclear issue does appear to be crumbling somewhat in the face of this very dangerous situation. We have seen over the last year, the New York Times, for example, with its series At the Brink, real change for that major newspaper, which tended not to cover the nuclear weapons issues very extensively prior to that. There is a series that's running in the Washington Post featuring Hans Christensen and others from the Federation of American Scientists. Just this past week, the Chicago Tribune published a widely syndicated editorial calling out the danger of nuclear war and remarking, I think somewhat inaccurately, on the fact that there isn't yet a movement to oppose nuclear weapons. We've also seen the very good response that Annie Jacobson's book received. It was widely reviewed. It was a bestseller. I don't think that would have happened 3 years ago. Something has really changed that book was so well and appropriately received by the general public. We know now of plans for a number of major motion pictures around the dangers of nuclear war. James Cameron announced a couple of weeks ago that he's going to be making a movie about Hiroshima, about the attack on Hiroshima, which I think will be very graphic and will help people to understand what we're talking about when we discuss the danger of nuclear war. Um, the Annie Jacobson's book has been picked up by a Hollywood studio, and my understanding is that the actor Denis Villeneuve will be the director of a movie based on that book. The book itself reads like a thriller, even though it's a very well documented, almost scholarly work. A movie by Denis Villeneuve will almost certainly get a huge audience. And Netflix has apparently optioned the British movie Threads, which was released in the 1980s, sort of a UK version of The Day After. All of these should get the message that nuclear war is an incredible danger out to a much broader audience than we've been able to do up till this point. So there is a growing receptivity to the message that nuclear weapons pose an existential threat, and we need to take advantage of that. And part of our message, I think, needs to be an ongoing reminder to people of what is at stake here, what is going to happen if these weapons are used. Now, I suspect that most of the people on this webinar are quite familiar with this information, and I won't belabor it, but there are significant segments of the population, like the vast majority, who don't know this information. They don't know that the bombs that exist today are 6 to 50 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. They don't know that major cities will not be targeted with one small bomb, but with many of these larger bombs. They don't understand that if there is a war between the United States and Russia, something like 200 million people will almost certainly die in the first afternoon. And those who survive will be facing impossible circumstances with none of the support systems which are necessary to preserve life in modern society, and that most of the survivors in the US and Russia will also die. They don't know about the new data on nuclear famine, showing that a war between the United States and Russia will in fact cause a nuclear winter and will lead to a global famine that has the potential to kill 3/4 of the human race, 6 billion people, in the first 2 years. And the famine, as we know, will continue beyond those first 2 years. The study only went out that far. And finally, they don't know that even a much more limited nuclear war, as might take place between India and Pakistan, has the potential to kill 100 million people in the first afternoon and to cause a global famine not quite as severe as that the US-Russia conflict would cause, but bad enough to kill 2 billion people, a quarter of the human race, including 130 million people here in the United States. So we need to bring that information to people because we know from all of our past experience that understanding the danger is essential to motivating people to take action. People, if they don't know that there's something they should be afraid of, they're not going to take action to avoid that. And we have to give them that information. We owe it to them. People have a right to know what is out there because without that knowledge, they can't take effective action. Now, many Hiroshima observances in the past have tended to have something of the character of a memorial service, commemorating and honoring the people who were killed at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But I think our observances this year need to have a very different character, and I'm glad that the one that we're planning in Boston does. You know, the Hibakusha, when they tell their story, they're always very clear, at least the ones that I've heard, that they're not telling this to talk about what happened to them so much as to use what happened to them to motivate people to make sure that it never happens again. The cenotaph at the Peace Park in Hiroshima, the inscription, I will probably get this not exactly right, but it says, rest, you souls who are buried here, rest in peace, for the evil will not be repeated. And that's really the thrust of the whole Hibakusha movement, to make sure the evil is not repeated. So we need to use these coming anniversaries as a time to get out the message about how great the danger is, how catastrophic the consequences will be, and to help people understand that they can do something about this. You know, as I often say, nuclear weapons are not a force of nature. It is not as though an asteroid is coming at the planet and there's nothing we can do about it. We know how to dismantle these weapons. We've dismantled 50,000 of them. We know exactly how to dismantle the 12,000 that remain, and we can probably do this in 3 or 4 years' time once the decision is taken to do that. And so we need to convince our fellow citizens to become part of a national and international movement to bring about exactly that change in government policy. Internationally, we have the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons, which played the key role in securing the adoption of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in 2017, and has played a leading role in universalizing that treaty, getting more nations to sign on, more nations to ratify the treaty. And this is a huge accomplishment, which has really transformed the international conversation about nuclear weapons. But we also have to recognize that none of the 9 countries which actually have these weapons have joined the treaty. None give any indication that they're going to, and they've all made it pretty clear that all of them, that they will not disarm unilaterally. And so we need to figure out, those of us here in the United States, how do we use the treaty? How do we use the growing understanding of the nuclear danger to change policy here in the US? And to that end, we have started the Back from the Brink campaign, which we think is the best vehicle that exists at this time, and probably the best vehicle we have had since the Freeze campaign in the 80s, to bring about fundamental change in US nuclear policy. The campaign is focused primarily on a demand that the United States enter now into negotiations with all 8 of the other nuclear armed states for a verifiable, enforceable agreement to eliminate their nuclear warheads according to a negotiated timetable, so they can all join the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons together. And this campaign has enjoyed some very substantial success. We now have over 400 NGOs across the country that are part of the campaign, including many national faith communities, many national environmental groups, scientific groups, medical groups, and so on. We have a student group now, Students for Nuclear Disarmament, that is promoting this campaign on college campuses and high school campuses across the country. We've gotten the buy-in for the first time in a very long time of organized labor. Here in Massachusetts, both the Mass Nurses Association and just this past Saturday, the Mass Teachers Association, by a unanimous vote of its board, have endorsed the campaign and are planning to take action on this. The Teachers Association is going to be making available to all 117,000 of its members the terrific educational materials prepared by the team at WGBH for use in high schools. In addition to the NGO community, we've gotten more than 70 cities and towns across the country, including 20 here in Massachusetts, to endorse the campaign and pass resolutions in support. We have a resolution pending here in the Massachusetts legislature. If Massachusetts passes this, it will join the Maine Senate, the New Jersey Assembly, both houses in Rhode Island, Oregon, and California, in calling for the US government to adopt the policy platform of Back from the Brink. And finally, we have congressional resolutions. In the House of Representatives, HRES 317, introduced by Massachusetts Congressman Jim McGovern, and now with 28 other co-sponsors. And on the Senate side, SRES 323, introduced by Senator Markey with 4 other original sponsors. And these provide, I think, a real focus for the work that we are trying to do, something very concrete that we can offer to people who want to take action, examples of things they can do, urging their legislators to co-sponsor these bills, urging at the state level the Massachusetts Senate to pass the state resolution, S1649. And I think it's a message that we need to be bringing to people, both of fear and danger, but also of hope. Because we have seen in the past, in the 80s, that a movement can grow very rapidly and can bring about fundamental change in US nuclear policy. In 1983, the US and the Soviet Union almost went to war twice. It was the policy of the United States to pursue the ability to fight and win a nuclear war in Europe. And less than 2 years later, Reagan and Gorbachev made their famous declaration that nuclear war could never be won and must never be fought. I think when we look at the current political leadership in the world today, we're pessimistic that we can see that kind of change. But I would remind us all, who in the world would have thought that Ronald Reagan was going to be the person to end the Cold War arms race? So it's up to us to work at all levels, to reach out to government leaders when we can directly, and to build a movement of our fellow citizens that makes the leadership listen to the arguments we're putting forward for the elimination of nuclear weapons. And I hope all of you will be able to come to the event on the Greenway next Wednesday, and you'll tell your friends and neighbors. This is a chance to really draw attention, perhaps get some press attention to this issue, and make some real strides forward. So thanks very much.
Ira, thank you. And No, you captured the, if you will, the double reality that we're facing, so well. On the one hand, the danger, and on the other hand, the growing opportunities. It does bring to mind back in 1980 when a guy named David Macaulay decided to take the concept of a nuclear weapons freeze to town meeting, and simply a reminder that one of us with some imagination can help spark an awful lot. So let me then turn to Marie, and looking forward to your sharing both your words and your PowerPoint.
Yeah, thank you so much to Joseph and Massachusetts Peace Action for inviting me to this important discussion. Let me share my slide.
Looks good.
Looks good. Okay, wonderful. My name is Mari Inoue. I'm based here in New York City. I'm a co-founding member of Mehan Project for Nuclear Free World, and we've been collaborating with peace and environmental groups here in the US, Japan, and beyond to promote nuclear-free policies. I'm a co-chair of the World Nuclear Victims Forum, which will be held in Hiroshima this October. And if you go to the QR code, you'll be able to get more information. And I will talk a little bit more about the forum later in my presentation. Today, I'd like to talk about two events that we are co-organizing to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And first, before that, I'd like to share two important quotes that resonate with me so much. And one is nuclear and humanity cannot coexist. It's a quote by Ichiro Moritaki. In Japanese, nuclear is now. It's an inclusive word, includes nuclear weapons, nuclear energy, nuclear technology, radioactive waste, nuclear facility. And this word was announced in 1975, exactly half a century ago. He was a Hibakusha. He survived the atomic bombings in Hiroshima. He was a philosopher, professor of Hiroshima University, and he devoted his life opposing nuclear weapons and war, as well as everything about nuclear. He also called for victim assistance and reparation for atomic bomb survivors. And he rejected the nuclear age as a civilization of power or violence and called for nuclear-free future. And he organized the first World Conference against atomic and hydrogen bomb in Hiroshima in 1955. This was before Nihon Hidankyo was established. And he was founder of Hiroshima Hidankyo, which was first founded in May 1956. And a couple months later, Nihon Hidankyo was founded, and he was a key figure in establishing Nihon Hidankyo. For those of you who never heard of Nihon Hidankyo, it's an organization established by atomic bomb survivors, and they received a Nobel Peace Prize last year. And Mr. Moritaki was also famous for staging more than 500 sit-ins in front of the cenotaph of atomic bomb victims in Hiroshima Peace Park to protest nuclear tests worldwide. And he did that until weeks before he passed away in 1994. Another quote I'd like to share is a quote by Mr. Kazuo Ishiguro. He received the Nobel Literature Prize in 2017. He was born in Nagasaki City 9 years after the end of the World War II. His mother survived the Nagasaki bombing, and she told him the importance of passing down the memories of war to the next generation. So he said in an interview after he received the Nobel Literature Prize, he said, "Passing down memories of war to the next generation is our responsibility." So for us, commemorating Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings is not just about abolishing nuclear weapons. It's also about opposing war. And this word resonate with me because especially our parents are aging, and their memories are fading. And I feel the social responsibility to pass down their memories of war to next generation. And I'm trying to find how I can do that. So we have been organizing August 5th peace gathering in front of the Japanese consulate in New York City since 2015. And if you plan to be in New York around that time, please join us. We'll be there starting from noon. And we also hand-delivered an open letter to the people of Japan from US groups. This letter will be hand-delivered to the high-level official of Japanese consulate. And every year we have different theme, but we ask people of Japan to give up the nuclear umbrella of the United States. Also, the letter always start with the expression of regrets and apologies for the US roles in using atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And this was first suggested by a member of Veterans for Peace, New York City chapter. When we were strategizing in 2015, he suggested that we should submit a letter of apology with a bouquet of flowers. And that's what we've been doing. And I support the group coalition to set up an appointment with Japanese consulate. And we have been co-organizing this with Veterans for Peace in New York City chapter, Peace Action New York State, Pax Christi New York State, New York City War Resisters League, Brooklyn for Peace, Raging Grannies, Granny Peace Brigade, and other New York City peace organizations. And we have been doing this since every year. We chose August 5th because it's August 6th in Japan when the atomic bomb was used in Hiroshima. And when August 5th happened to be on a weekend, we organized a gathering on weekday on August 8th, for example, which is August 9th in Nagasaki, in Japan. That's the day when Nagasaki was attacked with atomic bomb. And we also organized an online event during COVID. And these are the photos from last year. And New York City peace organizations have been co-organizing some rallies and peace gatherings in front of the United Nations during the States Party meetings to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. These are the photos from 2023. We did a similar rally in front of the UN this year in March. And we invite members of affected communities as speakers. And in this slide, in the center, you see Tina Cordova from New Mexico, from the community that was impacted by the radioactive fallout from the Trinity test, the first nuclear explosion in the world. And also on the upper left side, you see Petuch Gilbert from Acoma Pueblo, also from so-called New Mexico, impacted by the uranium activity. So I'm a co-chair of the World Nuclear Victims Forum. We are co-organizing this event with Hiroshima Group, Hiroshima Alliance for Nuclear Weapons Abolition, which was founded by Ms. Haruko Moritaki, second daughter of Ichiro Moritaki. And this was organized in 2015, and we decided to collaborate together this year. And this is a brief program of the forum. We plan to have speakers from members of affected communities, including atomic bomb survivors, second, third generation atomic bomb survivors, members of the communities impacted by uranium activities, nuclear fuel production, nuclear tests, nuclear power plant disasters, radioactive waste, depleted uranium weapons. And also through listening to these testimonies, we plan to build solidarity with nuclear victims in the world so that we'll be able to establish the rights of nuclear victims and seek reparation for them. And at the end of the program, we plan to adopt a Hiroshima Declaration and the draft declaration on the rights of nuclear victims, which are something that we've been working on since last November with experts and community members of affected communities. Our goals of the Nuclear Victims Forum is to ask participants to listen to the voices of nuclear victims and recognize the ongoing impacts of nuclear colonialism worldwide, and learn from the predecessors who led the atomic bomb survivors movement and nuclear abolition movement, and reimagine the nuclear abolition movement to establish the rights and reparations for nuclear victims. So many atomic bomb survivors are still fighting in court because they are not recognized by Japanese government, such as Hibaku Taikensha in Nagasaki, and also Hibaku Nisei or second generation Hibakusha are not recognized as nuclear victims in Japan. Also, we would like to demand accountability of perpetrators that created nuclear affected communities. And also, we would like participants to reflect and understand our social responsibility for allowing policies that create nuclear sacrifice zones worldwide, where the foundation of survival is unreasonably trampled on. And we'd like to stand in solidarity with nuclear affected communities and collaborate with them for policy changes to achieve a nuclear-free future without threat of nuclear harm or radiation exposure. So we have amazing speakers coming from Japan as well as outside Japan. There are indigenous peoples from Australia, United States, India, physicians for depleted uranium victims, Congolese human rights lawyer, activists from South Africa, Korean atomic bomb victim, because many Korean forced laborers were brought into Japan during the war and before the war, because Japan occupied the Korean Peninsula from 1910 to 1945. And during that time, Korean people were brought into Japan to work in factories. And that's why tens of thousands of Koreans were impacted by atomic bombings. And initially they did not receive any assistance from Japanese government when the Hibakusha assistance law was enacted in Japan. So they suffered a discrimination even after the war. And we will also have members of Marshallese community, filmmaker from India, and also physicians affiliated with the IPPNW. And through recording, we will also hear from uranium miners and so on. And from Japan, we have a keynote speaker, Mr. Takashi Hiraoka, who is a former mayor of Hiroshima City. He played a significant role in supporting a Korean atomic bomb victim. We also have Hibakusha, Black Rain victims, Hibaku Nisei, or second generation Hibakusha, Hibaku Taikensha in Nagasaki, who are not yet recognized as nuclear victims. We also have experts on radiation biology or health impacts of radiation exposure. And we have members from Fukushima as well, including youth plaintiff of the 311 Children's Thyroid Cancer lawsuit, will be joining in a pre-recorded video and they will share about their struggles, ongoing struggle. So I'd like to invite you to join us and support the forum financially as endorsing organizations if you're interested in supporting us. So please go to the website through the QR code and learn more about the purpose of the forum and also the more detailed program and list of speakers there. And this is my last slide. I like to share these two posters. We still have 9,615 nuclear warheads as of June 2025. And in addition to that, we have fissile material that could make additional 111,000 nuclear bombs. And please note that Japan is not a nuclear armed state, but it has almost 46 metric tons of separated plutonium because Japan has nuclear reactors. So that will be a security threat for the region as well. And thank you so much for being patient with me, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right, thank you so much, both giving people an idea of what's been done in New York, living within the, if you will, living within the pain and the suffering of the A bombings. I want to add one thing before we go to Q&A. I want to start with the first question in a second. But if you do this work long enough, you have to, as Ira has been saying, you have to really confront the nature of the evil. And to say that 25 years ago, I led a delegation of Japanese Hibakusha and U.S. downwinders to meet with the Undersecretary of the Department of Energy here, the man responsible for all of the studies on the impacts of radiation. And when you go to Hiroshima, Nagasaki, or the Marshall Islands, they'll tell you how they were used as guinea pigs. With the ABCC Commission, where they were studied but not given medical care, and the same with the 4.1 program in the Marshall Islands. And they say they're used as guinea pigs. So in this meeting with the Department of Energy official, I asked him if he could, that you could expect victims to think the worst of their victimizers. So I said, can you deny that the studies have been used to exploit, to use them as guinea pigs to study but not help? And I said, oh no, we've used those studies for everything, including the design of new nuclear weapons. And it just tells us, if you will, the nature of the evil that we're dealing with here. I want to start with the first question to Marie, and then we'll open it up, which is, will the forum in Japan be online? Can people who can't make it to Japan listen in and learn from it?
We are still not sure, but we plan to do that. But probably that is due to the limited technology and resources. It'll cost so much money. Someone told me that it will take like $5,000 to do the live streaming. So we'll record it and we'll share the links afterwards. But about the live recording, I'm not sure. And because of the time differences, it might be difficult for people from the United States to watch anyways.
Okay, thank you. Well, we'll certainly look for that link. Just to remind people, if you want to ask a question, go to the React button at the bottom of your screen. And then I can see your hand, as I can see Michael Brackney's now. And to ask that you keep your questions short and indicate for whom it is directed. Michael?
Thank you, Joseph. Ira and Mari and Joseph too, given the difficulty we've had for so long in using, how did you put it, Ira? Fear, danger, and hope as motivators to change our policy. I'm wondering if we need to aim much deeper at what I believe is the policy of imperialism behind all of this. It seems to me those three factors haven't worked so far simply because we're so far gone on our own imperialism, and that's what we really need to challenge in order to be successful in eliminating nuclear weapons. Please tell me what you think about that.
Okay.
Well,
Whoever wants to go first.
I mean, I think fear and hope together actually have had a huge impact. In 1983, we were on a collision course with the Soviet Union, and we brought about a complete fundamental change in the U.S. and Russian Soviet nuclear policies, largely driven by a movement that was motivated by fear and hope. We have had less success in the years since because we haven't done a very good job of scaring people. Most people don't believe that nuclear war is possible. Most people don't know, young people don't know anything about nuclear war. And what we do see all the time when we go out and educate people, when we talk to them about this, we get exactly the reaction one would hope for, which is they become very concerned and they want to do something, which is why Back from the Brink has been able to grow so dramatically over the last couple of years. So I think it's we have already demonstrated, in fact, this approach does work. We just need to carry it out more expansively than we've been able to up until now. And part of the reason why we haven't been more successful in recent years has been that the media, politicians, have chosen to act the way the rest of the population has, in denial and pretending this problem doesn't exist. And that's why I'm so encouraged, in particular, by the fact that the media does seem to be starting to pay attention to this, and that we've had some substantial success in getting politicians, both at the federal and local level, to take up this issue and speak out about it. I think there are lots of people who would not share your critique of imperialism, who would very much favor getting rid of nuclear weapons. And while I think that your critique is fair, I think we don't want to unnecessarily limit the scope of our anti-nuclear movement by making agreement on a bunch of other issues a requirement for membership.
Mary?
Thank you for that question. I think it's been 80 years and we're still living in a very dangerous world. In fact, that we have TPNW, we have so many supporters in anti-nuclear movements, and still we're facing a threat of use of nuclear weapons. And I think we are living in a crossroad where we need to rethink about the nuclear abolition movement. And I see that atomic bomb survivors play a central role in leading the abolition movement in Japan. And I'd like to learn something about that from them. Because outside Japan, I don't necessarily see members of affected communities playing a central role in leading the abolition movement. And they know the struggle, they know the impacts of the nuclear policies, and they have voices. And recently, a Radiation Exposure Compensation Act was expanded because people in New Mexico or communities impacted by the Manhattan Project, they fought so hard for decades, for years. And we need a kind of support for affected communities in order to make more like realistic or more effective advocacy efforts. So I think that our World Nuclear Victims Forum will be a place for us to reevaluate what we need to do so that we can finally make the right decision and right direction.
Before I call on John, I'll just say, the critical thing is people getting out and doing the work, doing the education, showing the films, reaching out to schools, reaching the next generation, which, as Ira said, has almost no idea about the meaning of nuclear weapons or the dangers that they pose. John, you are up for a quick question here.
Okay, thank you. And thanks very much for having me here. I guess this is for Ira, but for everybody, really. If I go to Europe, first of all, you said we're closer than ever to nuclear war. And I think that's accepted by all you folks, but not by me. necessarily. But let's go back. Assault with a deadly weapon. If I come to your house and point a rifle at you, it doesn't even have to be loaded, but I'm guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. We know, or we presume, that the United States and Russia have nuclear armed missiles pointed at each other 24 hours a day, ready to fire. So my question really is, aren't we engaged in some form of nuclear war right now? It seems to me that that's an act of terrorism. We are threatening the world and we are making people afraid, as all of you seem to be, of this nuclear war. So where do we get off? Why can't we just disarm unilaterally? It seems like it's the only appropriate thing to do. The Pope says it's wrong to have one. I agree with that. Why do you think it's cool until we sign a treaty? That's the end of that. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, well, thanks, John. I mean, I agree with you that the nuclear weapon states, all of them, not just the US and Russia, use their nuclear arsenals all the time. By possessing them, they use them to get their way, to bully their neighbors, and to have an outsized say in world affairs. I think, though, that assault is different from assault and battery, which would be the actual use of nuclear weapons, exploding nuclear weapons against your enemies. And I actually personally wouldn't
Assault with
favor.
a deadly weapon, not assault.
John, let I respond.
Yeah, so I actually wouldn't favor
I
referring
know,
to
but
what we
not
have right now
responding to
today.
the question.
John, you don't
The
have the
question
right
was-
to do this. Cole,
I'm sorry,
could you cut him
okay,
off?
thank you.
So I actually wouldn't want to refer to the current situation as nuclear war, because I think that sort of trivializes what will actually happen if nuclear weapons are used on cities, on people. But I think it's very important to point out, as you did, that nuclear weapons are being used today by the nuclear weapons powers. This myth that they only exist to protect us is just that. It's a myth. They exist in order for us to be able to project power on the world scene. And that's true of the United States and the other 8 countries as well. Why not get rid of them unilaterally? I think the most important reason not to do that is that I can't imagine that happening. I cannot imagine even a US president who was committed to the abolition of nuclear weapons, who was working day and night for it, being able to get rid of them unilaterally. And frankly, getting rid of the United States weapons unilaterally doesn't solve the problem, because a war between India and Pakistan can destroy the world that we know. We need to be working for the universal elimination of nuclear weapons. And I think that the most practical way, the most promising way to do that is for the United States to engage with the other countries that have the nuclear weapons in the way that Reagan and Gorbachev engaged with each other, and together work out the details so that they will get rid of their weapons. We can stand here all day and say the US should get rid of its nuclear weapons. We need to have in mind a strategy and a path for achieving that. And that path, in my view, does not consist of saying get rid of your weapons today. It consists of saying to the United States government, nuclear weapons are not in our interest. They're going to destroy us. We need to get rid of them. We need to sit down with the other countries that have them and work out the details so we can actually do that.
Marie?
Yeah, I agree in that United States need to engage with other nuclear armed states and eliminate all the nuclear weapons altogether. I also think that it's so important to challenge the nuclear deterrence policy, because before the nuclear weapon was used or tested, their own people are impacted by uranium activities, by waste coming from the nuclear weapon facilities and so on, and they're killing their own people. And what kind of deterrence are you trying to protect when you're harming your own people first before attacking the so-called enemies? So we need to also challenge those, nuclear deterrence policies, and talk about the economical feasibility of nuclear weapons programs. Instead of spending trillions of dollars for nuclear weapons programs, why can't we use it for Medicaid, Medicare, especially for those communities already impacted by the nuclear radiation and radioactive contamination from the nuclear testing and so on. So, yeah.
Sally, you've got a question.
Yeah, I was wondering if Mari, you and Ira would comment on, you made the statement that, we really need to abolish war. Abolishing nuclear weapons is very important for the planet, but war is still on the table if we abolish nuclear weapons. I just read this article in the New Yorker about is the US ready for the next war? And they had a whole scenario around Taiwan and, this maybe in the next couple of years with, different scenarios that they're playing out in the Pentagon. I'm sure they're playing out scenarios in China that may or may not lead to nuclear war. But even without that, it's like, as long as we have these countries deciding that they have to confront each other militarily as the default, nuclear weapons war is going to be somewhere on the table.
Yeah, thank you, Sally, for that question. Absolutely, we need to abolish war. That's something that Hibakusha atomic bomb survivors have been saying, because Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombings were used during the war. So they not only say no more Hiroshima, no more Nagasaki, they say no more war, no more Hibakusha. Also, I'd like to highlight that those perpetual wars, those following policies create tensions, and that led to recently attacking nuclear facilities of other countries that could lead to the regional war. And I absolutely agree that when all these nuclear armed states are in war with their neighbors, there is a risk of a regional war that could be escalated, and we don't want that. So I support the idea of promoting peace through education and diplomacy.
Yeah, I would add to that, though. I approach this, I'm an emergency room doctor by training, and I think the planet has got a whole bunch of very serious life-threatening illnesses. It's got heart disease, it's got cancer, it's got diabetes, but right at the moment it's bleeding out. And we need to attend to the life-threatening situation first. And that's kind of how I view this. It's a triage question. We need to get rid of nuclear weapons immediately because they otherwise pose the risk of immediately destroying us in ways that conventional warfare won't. The flip side of that, though, the positive side is that I think you can make the case to world leaders that nuclear weapons are simply too dangerous and we need to get rid of them. In the process of doing that, of negotiating the agreements necessary to get rid of nuclear weapons, I think you can transform international relationships. We saw this in the 80s. The conversations between Reagan and Gorbachev initially were about ending the Cold War nuclear arms race. But in the context of that conversation, a whole lot of the other issues that divided the United States and Russia got brought into perspective. And by the time the 1980s were over, not only had we ended the Cold War arms race, but we had transformed the US and Soviet Union from deadly enemies into partners, essentially, who were working to try to figure out how to make the world a safer place. I think the same thing can happen today. I think the negotiations to eliminate nuclear weapons, the process of carrying that out, can provide a model for dealing with the climate crisis, dealing with the next pandemic, dealing with regional conflicts that arise, and so on. And so I see this as part of the continuum, but you need to start with the most urgent problem, the one that's going to kill the patient right away, and that is the danger of nuclear war.
I'm going to jump in here for just a second because I'm old enough to remember here. There was actually this morning, there was a webinar initiated by the International Trade Union Confederation, which has millions of members across the planet. And its focus was on common security. And I think one of the things that we need to raise up, as they did, was the paradigm with which the Cold War was ended. Under the pressure of popular movements. And remember, the movements of the early 80s were fueled by imagination. They're fueled by people who had the fear. And that led the Prime Minister of Sweden, Olof Palme, to bring together the most senior members of the Soviet and the U.S. governments. And you can read actually in Georgy Arbatov's memoir how in discussions within that framework, discussions with U.S. figures, he came to understand that it was possible to address the deepest fears that each side has in ways that wouldn't weaken, in that case, Soviet security. The idea that you can't be secure if your rival feels insecure, because that leads to driving the arms race. And so, one aspect of what we, I think, need to do in terms of hope and alternative vision is to be raising the concept of common security. This is the International Peace Bureau, ITUC, and others are doing. So that's my quick intervention there. We're coming toward the end of the hour. I see Derek Cassidy has his hand up. So Derek, it's up to you. You're muted. Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I was in the last atmospheric bomb test, hydrogen bomb test, 5 miles up, 1,000 miles south of Hawaii at Christmas Island. And I thought we were guinea pigs. My little ship was alone out there under the bomb. And it was 5 miles up in the air. And it was 80 times bigger than Hiroshima. And right after that test, the last atmospheric nuclear test was done by America, Kennedy unilaterally stopped nuclear testing, and the Russians followed suit without much delay. And so it does indicate, I think somebody earlier had the idea that maybe we could begin this whole thing, and Kennedy did it. Maybe if we started doing some unilateral stuff today, again, it would work, because it sure did work with atmospheric nuclear testing.
Derek, just to appreciate where your question came from, your comment came from, and what you endured, only to say that, as we hit the early 1990s, there were a series of coordinated unilateral arms reductions by both the United States and Russia. And I've been involved in some conversations with arms control diplomats on all sides currently. And, the biggest obstacle right now to those negotiations, even what we call it, the quiet, secret exchanges, back channel discussions about what can be done, is the Ukraine war, and the sense that we'll have to wait till its outcome for the two sides to begin to take steps. But reciprocal unilateral actions, which are not total nuclear disarmament, could certainly help move the process forward. Ira and Marie, do you have other comments on this, or you want to make last comments?
I would just say, in response to the specific question, the Back from the Brink platform specifically contains a number of unilateral measures that we think the United States can and should take to try to jumpstart the whole process and to demonstrate U.S. good faith in an effort to get rid of nuclear weapons. And I think you're quite right. There are some things that the U.S. could do, short of eliminating its nuclear arsenal, that would demonstrate that it wants to do that, and that would help to induce the other nuclear powers, particularly Russia and China, because the U.S., Russia, and China are really the determining forces here, convince them that they should enter into negotiations with us.
Marie, I'm just looking here to get the Back from the Brink URL. And here we go. Slow.
PreventNuclearWar.org. Very easy to remember. PreventNuclearWar.org.
Right, I'm going to put it into the chat slowly. So everybody can take a look at the Back from the Brink site and think about how you can work with it in your community, in your religious congregation, in your union, in your school, and otherwise. I want to close. People here are from a number of different states, but many are from Massachusetts. So I want to encourage you to please come to Boston or come to Dewey Square in Boston on August the 6th from noon until 7. We'd love to see you there. And you know, the responsibility really for saving this and future generations lies with all of us. And here is Cole Harrison putting up our webpage for the Boston-Hiroshima commemoration. And Cole, do you want to put that link into the chat so people have it before we leave? And we will be sending out the recording to all the people who were on or who registered, and it will include more information about our August the 6th event. But as Marie and Ira were saying, the 80th anniversary here presents us with a unique opportunity to be building for human survival. I want to thank Marie and Ira for joining us tonight, and for all the rest of you who made the webinar what it was. Thank you very much, and good evening, and go out and get rid of nuclear weapons.
Thank you. No